Hi, John. So you said the dark night is contemplation. And I'm just wondering, because many religious communities, or even in the wider church, they talk about contemplation as well. So I'm just wondering if this is actually what they mean when they say contemplation. Do they mean the dark night, or is this just an understanding or definition from the Carmelites?
Okay, first, it's not me. You said you say. It's St. John of the Cross teaching. I try as much as I can not to modify it or change it, even in my explanations. Yeah, he's teaching. Now, you're asking a big question, in the sense that contemplation is a very important matter, as you can see. To be very honest with you, you will find probably as many definitions of contemplations as many of persons you will have. Yeah. So if you have 100 persons, you will have 100 different definitions of contemplation. We haven't reached yet in the church, universal church, a final complete definition of contemplation. We have a little definition in, it's not a definition, but a description in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but we don't have an official document from the Church that defines in a complete and practical way contemplation, for the simple reason that I don't want to expand too much on that, but for the main reason is that we tried from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, different schools, as we call them, schools of spirituality, tried to find a definition, an agreement on contemplation, but unfortunately, even if some aspects were clarified, I mean, mainly one aspect, but we had it from the beginning, so I don't think that's an achievement, which is saying that contemplation is supernatural. We haven't reached a common agreement. So you have not only differences in the individual understanding of the individuals, but also you have differences in the understanding of the different spiritual families in the church. The Dominicans, the Carmelites, the Benedictines, the Jesuits, not to mention others, and the Franciscans, if you will. Now, this is the state of the church, and my master, Father Louis Guillet, who died in 1992, who sort of lived throughout that last century. It's a great century, by the way. Talked to me a lot about this issue of contemplation and how to understand it properly. He was extremely keen because he knew about all other definitions, about important authors in the last century, Dominican authors, and also Carmelite authors of the last century. Remember that in the Carmelite tradition, St. Thomas Aquinas, who is a Dominican, was considered before Vatican II as being the main master in theological studies. So the Carmelites had the Discalced Carmelite had a certain duty, if you want to, more than others, to follow St. Thomas Aquinas' teaching. And since we had very important theologians, especially in Rome, in the last century, in these years, 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, I won't mention their name, who were extremely influential. So their opinion and understanding of contemplation moved to the Carmelites. Now the question, and here I am following from very close my master, Father Louis Guillet. I think that the best way to find an answer is to read St. John of the Cross. And this is what we're doing, reading and studying. I don't claim to do something else. The course is very long. It could sound a bit boring for many people, for too long, but the aim is to read. And unfortunately, many authors don't read the text. They project on the text. So I hope by reading in front of you the text and showing you what he says and the connections, so we are really facing the text, I hope that it will be more convincing to deduce his opinion on contemplation. But since we are in the church, it's important for you to know that we have John of the Cross, but we have many others who talked about contemplation. So you have to bear with the church and accept that we can have different opinions. It is a central issue. It saddens me and breaks my heart to see the differences in opinions, because sometimes the differences are huge, despite what some historians, recent young historians said about the issue. There are huge differences. I studied that. I spent a big part of my life studying that. My master spent all his life studying that. So I'm benefiting also from what he gathered in his life. And he was a very thorough reader and study of St. John of the Cross. So you have to accept that there are other schools, that there are other definitions, and that till today, we don't have a thorough definition, altogether theoretical and practical. We don't have, neither nor. So practical means, how can I contemplate? It's a mystery. So you have different opinions around. And if you ask people, can you tell me what do you mean by contemplation? Be ready to hear all sorts of answers. So my responsibility is to try as much as I can to convey to you what one author only says about it, which is St. John of the Cross. He wrote enough to help us reach to the bottom of the issue. And it is quite surprising. And I know that from Father Louis himself. It was a huge shock in his life the day he started to study St. John of the Cross at the age of 54, more thoroughly than before. And it was a huge shock in his life to discover that what he discovered through reading and studying was different from what he was taught. And it took him in his entire life to sort of digest that, because the shock was so huge, to the point that he wrote a book on contemplation, and he firmly refused to publish it during his life. It was published after his death, because in this book he was addressing other authors, and he didn't want ever to speak badly about anybody. But it was a huge shock. So very important question, vital question for the church. Unfortunately, very weak answer. We need to work. There's no other answers. And you need to accept that there is a lot of variety in the answers. The only thing I can say is what I received, which is study John of the Cross, study John of the Cross, study John of the Cross. What he says, not what you say. What he says, not what you say. What he says, not what you say. You see, I repeated 3 times each one. Why? Because we don't do it. How many books you read on contemplation about John of the Cross? Contemplation according to John of the Cross, and it's not even following the text. Translations. Why to go that far? Translations. I'm talking for French language. I'm not talking about English language, because I'm not specialized in the English translations of John of the Cross. I can't speak for them because I haven't compared. But I did spend quite a lot of time comparing some of our translations in French. We have many translations. Some of them are one or two are excellent, and others are horrible. And amongst the horrible, it's venerable people who did it. It's not any person, it's just respectable people who did it. But it's addition to the text. And then you reach a point where you are saying things that are not according to John of the Cross. And if you are a disciple of Thomas Aquinas and of a certain school, you will then project all what Thomas Aquinas says on John of the Cross. No. It's more important to study what John of the Cross says, maybe later on to have a look at Thomas Aquinas and maybe discover that what you thought about Thomas Aquinas wasn't really that accurate. So we can talk for hours about this. It is extremely important for the church. This is why you have this course in the end of the day. Why do we do this course? It's in order just to respect what the author is saying. And it is vital. And if you attend some of my courses, especially what I teach about John of the prayer of the heart, you want to say something, Matthew?
Yes, because how is it possible that the church in 2000 years doesn't have an answer to this when it's such a, I guess, central pillar to its being? I mean, isn't one would think that something would have come up even in the fathers of the church or even early? Or am I very naive here?
No, you're not naive. You're to a certain extent, you're absolutely right. How come? You need to understand that the church has time. We live a short life, no? 80, 90, 100 years, and then we go back to the Father, but God the Father. But the church continues. There are plenty of things that took time to be clear. Let me take one simple example. I know it's not something practical, immediately practical, at least in our eyes, the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. For many centuries, the Franciscans on one hand and the Dominicans on the other hand were disagreeing. Not on the fact that Our Lady was Immaculate Conception, but on when exactly it started. Sorry, not on the fact that Our Lady was Immaculate, but on when she was Immaculate. Conception means from the very first second. It never touched her, while others, the Dominicans, said, no, maybe a little bit after, you see? So it took centuries. Now, I hear maybe some of you saying, okay, it is important, but in the same time, it's not necessarily, at least in our superficial eyes, a practical issue, while contemplation is a practical issue because it touches on prayer. While maybe the majority of us don't see the direct connection between Mary being immaculate and us. While I did speak about this and I have some videos on that, but that's extremely new to the practical implications of the dogma of Immaculate Conception. That's even the title is odd, but there are. So please have a look at that on the section, the playlist on Our Lady. I have some talks on that. Now, Immaculate Conception took us centuries to be clarified. It takes time to have a certain clarity and a certain agreement. Why did John of the Cross write? And he is essentially talking about contemplation. Because if we had some time, and you will see it if you want to read the rest of the chapter, he says, it's very little known, he says. I'm writing, and trust me, I repeat it, his job is not to write. Even though he's a magnificent writer and an inspired writer, the best amongst the best, but that's not his mission initially. His mission is to be just a monk. He wrote because of compassion. He wrote because he saw that there is a problem. This is why then he said, okay, and now I'll dedicate time, and it's an act of charity, an act of love. What did he find? He found that the correct understanding of contemplation wasn't there. He went back to certain authors, and amongst them Dionysius the Pseudo-Areopagite. who defines clearly the line of, as I say, it cannot, nothing to be perceived. In contemplation, there is nothing, in the prayer of the heart, there's nothing to be seen, which is shocking when you say, well, then how you call it contemplation and why you call it contemplation if there is nothing to be seen? Nothing to be seen by the senses and nothing to be seen by the mind, but it is to be seen by the spirit. Now, explain to me all that. You have 4 books of explanation, his books, no? Now, why did he write? He said, the first stages are very known, and plenty of books, there are plenty of books, but the further stages are not known. And this is why I'm writing. You can read the rest of this chapter we were talking about, which is now chapter 8. Read 8 and 9. You will see he says what I'm just said, because he says many people go through the first stage and it is very much described, but after that there's hardly anything written or experienced. Written or experienced. And we're talking about what? We're talking about deep contemplation. So our knowledge of deep contemplation apparently was clearly given to us in the 16th century through this man. Nobody else. I challenge. Nobody else. Many talked about contemplation. Meister Eckhart, Tauler, William of Saint Thierry, and many others. Dionysius himself talked about contemplation. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, but none to be compared with John of the Cross. He is doctor of the church, so thank God, at least there's something. So from the actual state till one day we reach a definition that is both altogether theoretical and practical, it will take time. Unfortunately, it will take time, despite what some say, that they reach an agreement. The 2 schools fought in last century. In the 30s and the 40s, they fought. You can check all the journals, through journals, no? The Dominicans had their journal and the Carmelites together, and then the other side where you had the Jesuits, they had their journal, and they fought like crazy. And it's in French, it's not in Latin, so you can read it if you speak French. So they fought like crazy, but then after a while, they stopped completely. Why? Some clever young historians say because they found an agreement. I'm so sorry, they haven't found any agreement. The proof is that we don't have any text about it. I know no official text, and the church is very wise. The church will never define if it's not mature. It took how many centuries? 6 centuries to define the Immaculate Conception when it became mature. But if it's not mature, you need to wait 2, 3 centuries or more. I don't know, maybe. It is also not only a theoretical issue also, because it is a theoretical issue. We need to understand what is contemplation, but also contemplation is something practical. So if you don't know what it is practically, how can you have it? Today, what is spread, which is part of the truth, not all the truth, it's that contemplation is given by God. It's a gift from God. It's infused. This is what we use the word infused. And the fight was between infused or acquired. The Jesuits were saying acquired, the Carmelites and the Dominicans were saying it is infused. Okay. One was underlying one aspect of it, and the other one was underlining the other aspect of it. So we came out to now, apparently, according to some historians, intelligent historians, saying, I'm ironic here, of course, sarcastic, they say that contemplation is infused. Fine, thank you very much. It's a gift from God, thank you very much. But the sad thing is that what we have added to it is that contemplation, God gives it whenever he wants, to whom he wants, when he wants. And you have quotes, and I will quote Teresa of Avila and others. So you are dealing with incapacity to know how to receive contemplation. Not only that, but you are dealing with half of the truth, because you are dealing with a very moody God. He might give like he might not give. While in fact, what is to be given here, quoting Teresa of Avila, is the consolation, the perception. not the contemplation in itself. In a way, my answer to blessing is a perfect definition of contemplation according to John of the Cross, because you can do it, but you don't need to feel it. You can do an act of faith to God at any time. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you. And this is contemplation. This can be done at any time by the grace of God. This can be done at any time. Did you feel anything? Did you see anything? No, because you're not supposed. While the popular definitions or popular things, Hilda, you are talking about people who define contemplation, they will define it the way they want. They will tell you anything. It's to see, and they might say, I don't know what they will say. Teresa of Avila had visions, or there are visions, etc. That's rubbish. That's utter rubbish. It's utter rubbish. Who said that God can be seen? Of course, old authors mentioned about it. Gregory the Great spoke about contemplation. Gregory of Nyssa spoke about contemplation. Other authors spoke about contemplation. Yes, but give me today, how do you formulate that? It's not clear. It's clear. It's relatively clear in St. John of the Cross. If you read, if you are really acquainted, very acquainted to what he says, you stop projecting, and then you read, and then you're shocked by the answer, because the answer is very, very arid. It's like, do it, but there's nothing to be seen. It's like, what? I thought contemplation means to see something. He will say, yes, you see it, but with your spirit. But by definition, the spirit is something and the rest is something else. So it's like nothing to be seen. Teresa of the Child Jesus contemplated. And then you might have other definitions of contemplation. Some people who would deal with maybe the scriptures, or would deal with have some lights in their minds, or God will reveal certain things to them, and then it will be described as contemplation. This is why then you will have different opinions. And we need clarity on that, and we don't have yet that clarity. This is why I made an effort in the School of Mary, especially in the Solid Foundation course, to clarify the two types of contemplation. The one specific to the prayer of the heart, where I'm following, of course, St. John of the Cross, and the one that touches on the Lectio Divina, and I'm also following St. John of the Cross, but in other chapters. I can mention them in another place. So here you are. Unfortunately, you opened a Pandora box, Hilda, but it has to be opened. But we might fight again, and no result, no avail in the end. We fought. Trust me. This is my job. I have the journals. I have the photocopies of the old journals. You can read them. You can do your research. You can see how they fought. Is contemplation acquired, or is it infused? So one writes, and then the following months the other one replies, and then the following months the other one replies. It was hell. No, we haven't reached the bottom of it intellectually, theoretically, conceptually. Truth and practical implication. Tell me how. Even till today, and I will conclude with that. In the Carmelite school, in the Carmelite order, the Scots Carmelite order, when you read Teresa of Avila, when you read her explanation of prayer in the Way of Perfection, the chapters I do explain, and when I explain the prayer of the heart, chapter 26, 28 through to 31, how they will tell you that you have the prayer of recollection, which is a type of prayer, and then you will have the prayer of quiet, which is God's possible answer whenever he wants, the way he wants. So if you don't have anything, well, then you stay in prayer of recollection. This is how it is presented today, which is not how it works. Not at all how it works. Not at all how I explain it also. Not at all. The text is not saying that. The text didn't say that these are two different stages in growth of prayer. No, these are two parts of one prayer. Read the text is very clear, chapter 30 and 31, and even the previous one, chapter 28 and 29, she starts with one and finishes with the other. It shows that if you do this, you get that. So they are together, but we don't see it. We don't understand it. So a big struggle, a big struggle. Unfortunately, it's a bit negative what I am saying, but that's the reality. You might be surprised to say, Jean, why are you then so calm about it? And as I said, when you study history, when you study the history of theology, you find that the church has time. So you stop thinking of tomorrow like tomorrow. You say tomorrow is maybe in 300 years. Of course, 300 years we will all be somewhere else. But that's the reality of the church. The church has time. It's bigger than us. And it will take time. You need people specialized in this field who would sit down and study. Do we have this? Look at my face. So you need people who they dedicate their life completely to that. And here is an appeal. I appeal to the entire church. I want young people who dedicate their life only to the study of spiritual theology all their life. Study, deepen it, live it, and then transmit it. We don't have that. We study other things, but we need to study only that, only spiritual life, and not start to study this, study that, etc. We have to get to the bottom of it. We need people dedicated to that. So I want, I don't know, 60 youngsters, a place for them, a good library, some food on the table, and tell them, work. Samsung, the company that makes our mobile phones, they have 40,000 researchers, people who their only job is to research how they can improve one piece inside of the mobile. One piece. One is the screen, the other one is the processor, the other one is the connection here you have here, one is the software, etc. 40,000 people. Their life is only to improve your mobile phone, and they have the money for that. What do we do? Look at my face. 40,000, and this is about our eternity, not about the mobile phone that might fall one day in the water. 40,000 researchers. Give me 100 only. I don't want 40,000. I need 100 who will work only on St. John of the Cross and will work tirelessly, not go here and there. And don't burden them with anything else. Anything else. Nothing. Just work. 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, only on that. And then, Hilda, you will be a happier person because you will get an answer to your question. So I need money, and it's an appeal because this video will appear on YouTube. I need money. I need 190, 60, 90 boys and girls, boys and girls. I'll train them how to study, how to work, but only in that. Don't want the attention to be diverted by other problems, community problems, other discussions, fights. Don't want that. We want people focused, like the Samsung people. This one works on the screen only. The other one works on this little button here that you have to move. Of course, this is not a Samsung, this is an iPhone. So this works on the other thing here. How can you want things to progress? You said it's too long. How come the church is not doing it? Well, I am the church. I am part of the church, and I'm telling you, give me the boys and girls, give me the house, I need their vocation, but because if they don't have vocation, well, you will pay them to work? I don't know. No, we never saw that in the church. We don't pay people to work. But if you want to pay them, they will work. I hope. I don't know. Will they work? I don't know. So you need a vocation for people to work. And I will teach them how to do it. I will show them how to work. But I don't want their attention to be diverted. Then you will get results. Then you will be a happier person because you will know what is contemplation. Then maybe we will have a practical definition. And then in the end of the day, we might have then some improvement because the grace of God will flow. Because that's the key. If you don't have a proper understanding of how the grace of God flows, what are we doing? 300 years at least, you will wait. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.